Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm here with Bridget Barnes, Director of Boys Town, Nebraska's Common Sense Parenting, and we are talking about teaching respect. So, good thing to teach, right?
Yeah, yes.
Important thing to teach.
Yeah.
Especially, holidays are coming up. Thanksgiving is just around the corner. So what are some ways that I could teach respect to my kids or make sure that they're respectful during our family gatherings? I'm sure there's a lot of pre-teaching involved, but what types of things should I work on?
Well, let's start with teaching respect is what I consider an umbrella word, a wording, a phrase. So a lot of things that go underneath that umbrella that you have to do before you can really expect children to be able to show respect. One of the big components is that parents have to model that on a consistent basis themselves. Kids are watching what you're doing, not always what you're saying. So if you want children to be respectful, you're in the car, somebody cutting you off, other people doing things, or, you show respect to your mom or whatever, they're going to learn it by your example and your interaction with them as well. The other thing is that there are a lot of basic social skills that need to be taught before a higher level like respect can be achieved. So really working with kids on being able to appropriately disagree, show sensitivity to others, asking permission of others, following someone's instruction without argument, are some of the basic things, among others, that kids will need to learn to really build up their ability to effectively use respect with others.
So does it help to sit down and kind of define, what does respect mean for our family? I know with a lot of the other tools that we have, every family's different. So when we talk about character and things like that, it's, we really focus on family values. So what are your family values and how do you define?
And being willing to kind of break that down and then showing how that relates to the outside world. So you might talk about moral values, you might talk about ethical or legal or, other different types of values that you can show respect to people in regards to, and how we as a family see that and our tolerances for that, and how the outside world, if you do this, that we might let you do here. What is that? How's that translate outside? And what should you not do? Because that, and then I really have to say that parents should try to maintain a similar societal expectation in regards to respect, because they set their kids up to fail in the outside world, and it can be a legal ramification for them, and other issues that come about.
So before I start talking about respect at Thanksgiving, talk about respect in general. So
I think so.
These are the behaviors that I want you to have.
We don't want kids to
show respect.
We don't want them to think it only happens at Thanksgiving or at holiday time. Now this is the time to be nice to people, or the rest of the year we're rude or crass or whatever the case may be. So I think, yes, it should be a conversation that happens often. And when my kids were younger, it's like the 12 days before Christmas, we start practicing the skills that I wanted them to have when we went to visit. Versus, so every day that they would practice those different social skills that I mentioned, like following instructions, disagreeing appropriately, accepting no, they could earn time in the privilege to take technology with them. If you weren't practicing those things, then
you get a long car ride, long, boring car ride.
Well, it might go, but you'd have to earn the time. Versus your sister did all those skills every day and can be on her technology. You didn't. So
that's
now
a great
you have
idea.
to earn that, So I always want to use that carrot and say, okay, this is how we do it. But don't wait till the last minute to expect children to know something you haven't taught and you haven't modeled.
So what would be some good, once we've covered the topic of respect and what would be some good Thanksgiving appropriate behaviors? Obviously, please and thank you are important. Maybe interrupting others or, waiting for your turn to talk. What are some other things that, might come up around Thanksgiving that'd be good to practice?
Well, if you meet an aunt you don't know and they want to kiss you, and you don't feel comfortable with that, how do you say, thank you, I feel more comfortable shaking your hand this time or hugging you this time, is that okay? Being able to say that politely. If your cousin or somebody wants you to do a prank, how do you, get out of that and say, I don't feel comfortable with that. Right, in a cool way, but I'm not doing that. I'm not down with that. That's not happening. My mama's crazy. I don't do that behavior. Exactly. Fine. Blame it on me. As long as you don't do something that would cause you some problems or your cousin's problems in the long run, because they might be following your lead. Because if you say no, maybe the rest of the kids say, yeah, this sounds smart to me to light this thing on fire and put it over here.
Right. I've seen a lot of articles about Thanksgiving and politics, especially this year. And so disagreeing appropriately, I think, is a good skill to practice for parents and kids.
Yeah. Learning to be silent, learning to excuse yourself. Yeah. Just learning to tell people that I don't feel comfortable, but thank you for sharing. They have the right to their views.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, you have the right to say, I don't feel comfortable.
Right. Let's talk about something.
Yeah, exactly.
And food, I mean, there's a lot of different foods sometimes at Thanksgiving. So being able to kindly pass on the food. And
well, when my kids were little, we had a wish list, what I want grandma to make, and a yuck item.
Yeah.
That you didn't have to eat that. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So and then that was sent ahead of time. If you did not submit that to me,
right,
and I could give it to your grandmother,
then
I guess you're up for grabs.
Right. Everything's on the table.
Everything's on the table. Now, it was a try it kind of a thing where you can try certain things that you hadn't tried before. So we would try to eat certain things, and then I would teach my kids to ask questions about stuff you didn't want to eat. Like you ask your grandmother, Grandma, how did you make that? And she would get in this long conversation about how she made it. And did you have to eat it when you're my age?
Yeah.
She would go, well, maybe not. And then you would say, well, thank you for asking. I'm going to have more potatoes, you know. And so learning how to have a conversation. I mean, really, you'd be surprised how many kids don't know how to have a conversation.
That's
how to use, a polite way to, say no or acquiesce out of a situation you don't feel comfortable in.
Yeah, I love that. See, and that's without that practice beforehand.
Right.
Kids have no idea how to do it,
We used to have mock dinner.
Yeah.
So mock holiday dinner, and we would pretend to be other people. So you have these the voice and the cadence or whatever, and we wouldn't have all the food, but we would have, and so you would be in situations and what if this, Uncle Joe's doing this, or what happens when this happens, and what do we do? What do we say?
Yeah.
How to ask a personal question, or first you have to ask a personal question. Because sometimes little kids, they just blurt out or say things. You're like, first you have to ask them, is it okay if I ask you about why Aunt Patty's not here anymore, or whatever, And if they say no to you, you need to say, okay, go on.
Yeah. I love that. I absolutely love that. And I love the idea about practicing specific skills, especially for families that are traveling, in order to earn some time on technology and screens while you're traveling.
Right. Kids need downtime. So earning that free time, like time to be one-on-one. So don't have your tablet or a phone when you're talking one-on-one with your grandmother. You need to be looking at her and not using that phone. And if you do that, then you can earn free time when you just get time away, when nobody's going to be bugging you about anything, and you can be on your tablet or whatever the case may be. And you'll find that kids are way more engaged when they know, versus you let them have that phone and they're not happily listening to their elders or someone else in the family.
I mean, that brings up a good point of appropriate use of technology at the dinner table or at the gathering, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I know at our house, it's no phones at the dinner table is always a rule, but it's not a lot of others. But, when you're going and meeting other members of your family and it's once in a year, I mean, I think that
and it's
probably a good time to
they have a basket where everybody puts it in, not just kids.
Yeah.
So because what I see sometimes is that the adults are still on their technology while kids are not allowed to have it.
Yeah.
So is a basket as you walk into the dining room, you put it there, put your phone on silence. You might have one phone that rings in case of an emergency or a landline, but no, let's all eat together. And then there you have the downtime where you can go back to technology for a little bit. But then we have family activities. We might be going places. We might be involved in games or whatever the case may be. And you shouldn't have technology on when that's going on.
And what a good, my kids always want to be involved some way. And in setting the table or in making the name tags for people, or some kind of creative fun thing to be involved. So decorating the basket where all the phones go, or making it look like a turkey or something. That would be a really fun activity to get them excited about it and get them on board.
Exactly. And having them involved in making an activity that's for kids. Like what are, kid time. So what is the kid time activity you guys think everybody would like to do? So they have an invested part in this holiday event versus you're dragging them to it and you're making them do it.
Right. That's awesome. But my nephew wrote a play for us one time. It was really
that's cool.
Interesting. And I think we all had hats, and it was. But we will remember that one forever. And he had a blast putting it together.
My son was he was a reporter, so he had a little play microphone, and he was running around interviewing people and hello. And we had him on videotape.
I love it.
Hilarious.
I love it. All right. What about just everyday situations? What are some fun ways to practice being respectful in everyday situations?
Well, there's 3 ways here at Boys Town that we practice with kids. We either let's pretend we're in this situation, or we might be playing a game, whether it's a board game, learning to wait your turn, we're in the ask permission, we're learning to get along and be a good sport. Because you have to use all those at the family football game, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
Or you might, put them in an actual situation, like little ones being able to greet. And they get scared and they're holding on to you. And so sometimes I would just take them in different places to greet people with different people at different times. So they're just used to the difference. That's the thing that scares them.
Right.
Is this is different and I don't know these people. So practicing a little bit.
That's awesome. What about just starting the conversation about respect? So what are some teachable moments that I could find? I know we talk about television a lot, and if you're watching a show and you're seeing something on the show, look for opportunities to point out being respectful or not being respectful, and how they would maybe handle it differently.
Yeah, whether it's watching a movie about a holiday gathering where people are being disrespectful. You can find plenty of those around. Or whether it's just listening to a song or watching a television show, whatever the case may be, or just reading a book and just sharing that. So there can be different mediums that we use in order to have the conversation, or just sitting down and saying, okay, here's the topic. What would you do if? And kind of talk about how respect should be used in those situations, even when maybe someone else isn't being respectful.
That'd be a fun game at the dinner table too, leading up to Thanksgiving. Or whenever. Any day. Okay, well, what about sports? So sports, I think, is a tough time sometimes for kids to learn to be respectful, but it's also a great learning ground for them to learn to be respectful. Especially because emotions and competitive nature gets involved. So, what are some things I need to make sure that, maybe on the way to a game or after a game, what are some things I should be?
I like that you're picking before and after, pick some neutral time to talk about it. Don't wait till the heated moment when the kids out there on the field or whatever to start trying to act like you're going to teach. So, before, talk to children about, I sometimes have kids, do mental visualization of the situation. Let's close your eyes and kind of visualize if you are asked that you're penalized. What are you going to do? What are you going to say? How do you feel? To check your breathing, things like this. What if you win? You're winning now. What should you do? What should you say? What should you say to the other team? Things like that. And a lot of athletes use that technique in order to win, games. So, having kids walk through that in their own mind, and you might find that along with the social skill training before, teaching them how to accept criticism without getting upset, how to calm themselves down and self-soothe themselves. Also just having that mental visualization of the situation and how they can handle it.
And I think that's a big time too, where we should focus a lot on what they did right. Because that's, if they get frustrated in a game and get upset, that's one time, but there was a lot of other frustrating times in that game. And so making sure that we're picking up on those and how well they handled it.
Usually we do notice if they make the touchdown, but we don't notice when they're accepting the criticism from the coach or
Right.
the penalty, or that they're being a good sport and helping someone up off the field for that matter that's on the other team. So I think when they come to us and we say good game, tell them what exactly you were seeing that was good about what they were doing. I just say good game, but what was that?
Right.
And all those social skills involved.
And not just focusing on the playing of the game, but
because there's a lot of
put into it.
$1 million athletes who are losing their jobs because they don't have the social skills.
Absolutely.
So,
That's a great teachable moment. Some recent events in the NFL.
How do we handle that differently?
That is not respectful. Okay, what about school? So, I'm not at school, so I don't know how my kids are acting. I don't know if I hope they are, but if I'm not getting much feedback from the teacher, what are some ways or some, creative questions that I could ask to make sure that, we're focusing on being respectful to your teacher, being respectful to your classmates.
Well, of course, you should check in with the teacher on a consistent basis. And now that we have technology, you can get emails and all kind of ways to communicate with the teacher. And you should, not just when things are going wrong. Try to check in all the time so you hear all the good stuff as well.
Right.
At the end of the day, here at Boys Town, we, kind of total up a child's day, their school day as well. And we talk to them about what happened with that day, not just what happened at school, nothing. We really kind of go into what was the best thing that happened to you today, what was the worst thing that happened to you today, what better decisions could you have made, and all of those things have to do with what they're going to have privilege to do in the evening, how free they're going to be based on decisions they make at school. So if you want kids to make good decisions at school, you need to check in with the school, number one. You need to teach kids what they need to know before they go there. If they have a problem with staying calm or with dealing with bullies or whatever the case, have them practice that before they go there. And then check in after school. Really check in, not just,
school.
Nothing. And, so I would just really have a moment. You can put on a timer and have a 5-minute date. Let's talk about it. And they might tell you a lot, they might tell you a little, but it'll get more and more as you get in a routine of doing it.
We always have a challenge when we have parent-teacher conferences. So they'll get, points for grades, and then they'll get points for words that we might hear at parent-teacher conferences, like kind or nice or respectful or things like that. And then whoever gets the most points gets a prize. So it's fun. It's fun. But it's awkward when you have to sit there and check the boxes when you're talking to teacher.
Oh, well.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. This is one I think that a lot of parents can relate to. So, your kids are often well behaved outside the home, usually, hopefully, but inside the home sometimes is a different story. I think sometimes they get away with being crabby and talking back a little bit more inside the home, and they never act that way outside the home, So what are some things that you can do, as a parent, so that they know that it's just as important in here to be respectful to your brother and your sister, or, to your mom and dad, as it is to be respectful to your teacher,
Well, at the end of the day, for any of us, parents or children, you can be a little crabby.
Right.
You've been in traffic, you got cut off, whatever the case may be. And I say, when you get home, don't start doing things right away. Give yourself a 30-minute break to get your mommy shoes on and for the kids to kind of unwind. And, be okay. That you don't require anything for that 30 minutes. Just so everybody can know where they really are and who we are as a family. Then after that, kind of ease into that. Maybe kids are hungry. Lunch might have happened early. Kids get snacked. Kids, just get into their comfortable clothes. All right, now then a buzzer goes off that goes, okay, now these are the things that you have to do. And by the time this buzzer goes off, I'd like to have them done. If they're not, then there's consequences for that. You make good decisions and then go on with cooking dinner or whatever you're going to do with your life. And just use that buzzer as a check-in. When kids are not, when that buzzer goes off and I wouldn't see a child, then I'd go look for one. And then they'd have to deal with that. But, I give them a chance to make good decisions versus getting into a people. And then I point out the social skills kids are using. You're making good decisions. got along with your brother,
Mhm.
you accepted no, you follow instructions. I focus on the social skill versus a chore.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And then I'd say, well, and why don't you go back and try that chore again?
Right.
And you did a good job of accepting criticism. Now I'm going to give you instruction to pick up this and that.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So I think that one little piece that we don't sometimes do is that we rush in. We are in a hectic kind of world. Everything is fast and now.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates some tenseness and, you know, and so kids get into this infighting and just everybody's on edge.
Yeah.
So just slow down.
Right.
A little bit.
Right.
Put less in your evening, you know,
Yeah.
as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And then have some expectations and use a timer just to check in on if those expectations are getting met. You don't want to wait 2 hours later and the kid still hasn't done their homework or cleaned up this or done whatever it is you want them to do.
Right. Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about before this about, you know, my kids last night arguing between each other all the time. And so I always wonder, you know, do I let them get away with that? Because, you know, it's family and it's, you know, their brother and sister and they're at each other's throats a lot. Or is it, you know, do I really make a point of, you know, would you treat your friends like that? Would you gripe at your friends like that?
What's crazy is I see that kids will be mindful when their parents are not around in the outside world. And then where their parents appear, those behaviors that they do at home reappear.
Right, yeah.
Because they know what your tolerance
They can get away with it.
And then you're embarrassed because they're doing the behaviors that you've allowed at home.
Right.
So you have to make up your mind.
That's a good point.
You know,
very good point.
Do I want them to do that in front of other people? Is it something I would allow if other people were watching me?
Right, yeah. Very. Got me there, Bridget.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so we got a question before. My son is autistic with ADHD, and he is mostly disrespectful when we are home. He's rude to my father and yells at me when I try to tell him something because he wants to finish a sentence, or he never started, or started with a, "You're going to listen to me." I will walk off and tell him when his voice is a whisper, he can talk to me, and ask him to say sorry to my dad. I mean, I think that's like the great way to approach it. What are some other tips that you'd have for her when she's dealing with son being rude to dad?
So when kids on the spectrum, some of that is to be expected as part of that disorder. However, that doesn't mean that I am not going to teach you that.
Right.
So children with different behavioral disorders, I try to use a lot of visuals with them because sometimes they're not aware of what they're saying before they know it. They've said it. It's out there. So with my son, I used to use a token. Every time he, you know, if I said something, he'd begin to argue, it would go in this little jar and he would see it.
Yeah.
You know, he would hear it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it, you know. I think, you know, and then when he, you know, I get to 3, then I'd walk away and say, son, you need to work on that. Right there, I told you to do something, you argue with me, and I prompted you 3 times, and you refused. And so then when I would go, you know, give him time, he would calm down. I'm really sorry. I don't know why I did that. Great. You owe me an apology. Anybody else? Okay. But he still would have these tokens in here that he'd have to do the behavior he had a problem with. I'm going to give you 3 instructions. I need you to look at me and just say the special letters O and K, and then go do what I asked you to do. You ready to get this 1 token out of here so you can go watch TV or do the things you like to do? Yeah, okay, great. And then he's more motivated. Right. Versus just, I'm sorry, because I used to think his middle name was sorry. Because the kids can say they're sorry, but if they don't learn the social skill he needs, he's going to need in school, out in, you know, in the community, I'm setting him up to fail. So, so I would just prompt him visually so he would see. And every time he would see those tokens, it would stop him. He would like, okay, that's 2. Okay,
she's serious.
Yeah,
I better.
Yeah, and then I'd lesson them along the way. So he would only get 2, you know, and at 1, then it was over, son, you need, you know. Right. So I would be shaping his behavior toward he wouldn't do that behavior very often.
I like that. And you've got a visual cue.
Yeah, something to help.
Audio cue.
It doesn't have to be that, but whatever, you know, it would help me too, because later on I would forget that he did that. But he would say, can I do so-and-so? Well, let's go look at this thing. Right. You got 3 of those in here.
That's awesome. I like that. We're going to do a blog on that. That's a good one. All right. What are some tips for teaching toddlers respect when they might not yet understand what it really means?
I think, you know, just like I said earlier, toddlers are looking at you. They're watching you and they're mimicking you. They're great mimickers. So they might not know what it means, but they'll mimic you. You see them, you know, pretending to be you. So if you're doing things that are respectful, like I'm picking up my clothes when I'm told, or I am saying thank you, and kids will repeat it. So I wouldn't expect them to really understand everything I'm saying to them, but I would model that and repeat it so they would also do those same behaviors.
Right. And the catching them being good. It's a great one for that.
As soon as they do it well, praise them.
Yep. Absolutely. Toddlers are tough with that. But
I know, but when they do get it, it's better to start young.
Yeah.
All those bad behaviors, if you let it go for a long period of time, to undo that takes a little bit of time. But if you start when they're young,
right.
Yeah, less teaching later.
Right. And then the transition to school is a lot easier as well.
Yeah, definitely. You're going to have less teacher calls, and kids will be able to know what skills to use, and they'll feel more confident. You want your kids to be calmer and confident and more consistent in their behavior, and that takes social skills training, and we're the ones who do that.
We have a fun integrity challenge that we've got that breaks down a couple of pieces, and so there's a family challenge each day that families can do together and work through, and it teaches a little something. At the end of the day, there's a dinner table activity, so they can discuss it at the dinner table. How did they show kindness today, or how did they show respect today? So we'll post that up here when we're done.
So that sounds like a very good idea.
Yeah, it's very fun.
Something to use at the holidays.
And everybody's doing it. Everyone's doing it. So it's perfect.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, Bridget, very much. Appreciate it as always.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Good luck during Thanksgiving and all your family gatherings.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.